Good evening. Thanks for joining. My name is Cindy Cremona. I'm the moderator, and this is Encinitas Viewpoint. We have a pretty exciting show on hand, so I'm going to get right to it. We have a lot of folks. We want to make sure that we leave time for Q&A. So I am going to introduce Bruce Ehlers, who is our special guest. Bruce is a 36-year Encinitas homeowner and is currently chairman of the City of Encinitas Planning Commission. Bruce has been defending our community character from overdevelopment for over 20 years. He authored and was campaign spokesperson for Prop A, the Encinitas Right to Vote initiative, which is on upzoning, which was successfully approved by Encinitas voters in 2013. He opposed excessive proposing upzoning in measures U and T, serves as the lone opposition member of the mayor's housing task force following the defeat of Measure T. And in his day job, Bruce is a senior VP of engineering for a residential security electronics company. And with that, and welcome, Bruce, so glad to have you back again.
Thank you.
With that, we will go to Julie Thunder, and the candidates will introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. I'm Julie Thunder. I'm running for Encinitas mayor because I believe we can do a better job growing our town without destroying our town. We need more traffic, or excuse me, gosh, we don't need more traffic. We don't need, oh my God, I said that I rang, I'm so sorry. We don't need more traffic, less safety, or flooded streets, and we certainly don't need the divisive politics. We need to work harder to keep the character of Encinitas, which is the very reason why we all chose our town in the first place. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Julie. Susan?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Turney, running for District 2. I've been active in Encinitas politics for over 15 years on a variety of issues. I led the passage of the Prop A Right to Vote initiative that we'll be discussing tonight. I decided to run because I don't see resident representation with the current council. They seem to vote with predetermined votes, very little discussion, far too much decision-making behind closed doors. They ignore public safety through poor road designs, trophy projects, and worst of all, we're now going to court because this council wants Prop A removed, our right to vote removed on housing element updates, the major upzoning that we'll ever see in our city.
Thanks, Susan. Can't wait to discuss it. And last but absolutely not least, Alex Riley.
Hi, I'm Alex Riley. First, just like to thank everyone for signing in tonight and participating. I think it's so important for all of us to know what's going on in our town. And I think a lot of people, when they do find out, they're pretty shocked. I was a 20-year lifeguard with the city of San Diego. I was also a Teamster representative. So I got to see how policy was made behind closed doors. Didn't always like what I saw there. And I see a lot of parallels happening here. Public safety is, of course, very important to me, as well as having good infrastructure as the solid base that our city is built upon. And I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves on a lot of projects without first addressing the primary concerns of the residents. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I think we're going to get right to it. Bruce, I think you've got some info to share with us, so I'm going to let you take the screen as needed.
Sounds good. Let's see if I can.
Yeah, we're up.
Trying to get it to go to the slideshow. Can you see that properly?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of information out there that you'll hear attributed to Prop A, and I thought as the primary author and chair of the Planning Commission and having a long history prior to Prop A and during Prop A, it is worthwhile during this this campaign that the people voting understand Prop A and why it's such a good thing for Encinitas. So I'm going to start with a little history of how we got here. The first, you go back to 1989 when we first adopted our general plan. And a very interesting thing about our general plan is it required a vote of the public for upzoning. So Prop A really wasn't anything new other than the original general plan also had an exception, a bypass, where a supermajority of 4/5 of the city council could fine for the public benefit and avoid a public vote. And that got used in the 90s quite often. All of the, not all, but at least I think the majority of the specific plans had upzoning in them, had heights that went above 30 feet on a conditional purpose. And they all used the 4/5 majority to bypass taking that to the people. So even though we had this in place, it was getting bypassed. Then in the 2000s is really when the pressure, and that was my first stint on the Planning Commission, where we first started looking at the general plan to update the general plan and the housing element. And the city, I remember it was in 2006 when the city first considered changes to our general plan to eliminate the public vote completely on zoning density increases. And we opposed that, and luckily they never got it passed, never got it through. As the state continued to add more requirements and RENA allocations, and we were further out of compliance with our housing element, the city got more serious in 2010 to 2012, and they formed a committee called the General Plan, I think Advisory Committee is what GPAC stands for. And they formed and proposed increased densities and height, especially downtown. It would have redeveloped a lot of downtown and really changed the character we have down there. It's interesting that the city council of that time, not the current city council, but the city council back then actually threw out the GPAC, and there was a lot of criticism of it that it really didn't listen to the public. Does this sound like a familiar refrain? That it hadn't really listened to the public. And if you read the ERAC report, the following committee, they actually said, quote, in the report, it was universally disliked, so they threw it out. And they started over with the ERAC. And at the time, it was a very developer-friendly council back in 2013. And the ERAC was, their committee came out and they proposed 4 to 5 story buildings, 45 units per acre, along primarily El Camino Real. But the ERAC committee, and that is the, what is it? Element Resource Advisory Committee. It was a new acronym, but essentially doing the same thing. It had 21 people, only 5 residents from each of the different communities, 1 environmentalist, and the rest were all developers, landowners, real estate agents, or business owners. So it wasn't necessarily representing the voters. And again, they came out with a pretty egregious recommendation for the second time in a row. And during all this, during the GPAC and ERAC, the city spent over $1.2 million on consultants, on these public outreach meetings, and just spent a lot of money getting nowhere. Well, the reaction by the citizens was, we need to stop this. And so that's when in 2013, a group of us, Susan was one of the group, and we formed a committee and went out and gathered signatures and passed Proposition A. And I'll explain further what Proposition A is and is not. Of course, the city council unanimously opposed it. That was the city council in 2013, but it passed with a majority of votes of the people. The first test of Proposition A came in 2016 with Measure T. And it was the upzone, again, with the city still trying to adopt a new housing element update as required by the state. And in order to do that, they had to upzone some land, but Measure T was in excess of what was required. It went much higher than what was required. It went up to 48 feet for the tallest buildings. Our current height limit is 30 feet. So it's gone 50% again higher. And that's one of the things people like, is the small scale of Encinitas. And it even included language that reversed Prop A. So it was a massive upzone. And in the end, it would only yield 199 affordable units. Incredible. Luckily, we campaigned against it. Susan led that campaign. I worked on it, and the voters defeated it. So then we reached out as a group, we reached out to the mayor at a large meeting in 2017, early in 2017, and offered to help. And so the mayor formed a housing element task force. I was the only opposition member of that. There were 4 people, and they only thought they needed 1 person from the opposition. And in the end, they didn't really listen. They adopted something that was essentially the same as Measure T. It was taller than the plan. And by the way, we had a reasonable plan that came out of Planning Commission that was up to 35 feet. They went much higher than that. They went up to 37 plus 4 or 5 feet, so up to 42 feet. And again, that went to the voters, and it was, then out of that came Measure U. So the city attempted almost identical to Measure T, and again, it failed with the voters. So that's how we got here. And you kind of have to understand how long this has been going on. This is not just Measure U. This is not Measure T. It's not even just Proposition A. Proposition A was a response to a lack of listening by the city council, and I would go a step further, an overreach or over influence by the developers and developer influences. And we'll go into that more as I go forward. So why was Proposition A necessary? Well, as I pointed out, the city council was approving zoning increases using a 4/5 majority for public benefit, although I don't think most people would have agreed that it was necessarily enough in the public benefit. I remember one case where they said, oh, it would provide additional housing, and that is a public benefit. And I don't think if I went and talked to the majority of the people in Encinitas, they would agree that just adding density with getting no benefit associated with it is what we're looking for. We were continually fighting developer-backed egregious upzone plans, and we needed a long-term systemic fix. We needed a fix, and this is really important, that would survive the ebb and flow of the city council majority. And that goes both ways. We, during the 2000s and early or late 1990s, we had a very conservative dominated city council. Now we have a much more progressive, almost, to the opposite end of the spectrum. We needed something that could survive both of these. And here's the most important concept. An initiative adopted by a vote of the people can only be changed by another vote of the people. So once we adopted Prop A, it can't be changed by a majority or even a super majority of the city council. They actually have to go back and have us vote to change it. And that's why we chose to do an initiative.
Bruce,
can I ask you a question?
Oh.
Sure.
Is the general plan still valid? How come we never hear about it anymore?
The general plan is still valid, but the general plan is comprised of multiple elements. And you'll hear housing element is one of them. There's another one called land use element. There's circulation element. There's a resource management element. There's 2 or 3 others, safety element. And they each have, think of those as policy. They have goals and policies. And then we write our municipal code to support them. And the municipal code and the general plan have to be consistent with each other, and the different elements have to be consistent with each other. So as we move forward and adopt a housing element and there are different policies in there, it can't say, we want to completely upzone everything and then have a land use element that says you can't upzone everything. And that's why Prop A was a vote of the people. It's not a moratorium. It's not a cap on growth. It just puts the people in the position of the final approval. So let's talk about one of the main goals here. And I think this is a main goal that the vast majority of people, left and right, middle, in the city of Encinitas stand for. That we all moved here for a reason. We all love the character. When I've done quite a few little focus groups and meetings and campaigns over the last 22 years. And community character that I get a very consistent feedback is about the small beach town ambiance. And I always hear that people want to control and keep limited the bulk, mass, and scale. And these concepts are all through our current general plan. Limited height and number of stories, Everybody that I talk to says that, and keeping the lower density that we enjoy today, or certainly not giving it up freely. I think that's what most people want, is that they don't want to just give it away as a windfall to a developer. They want to get something for it that is a public benefit, be it affordable housing, be it parkland, be it whatever it might be, but don't give it away for free. So the other thing about protecting community character is zoning rights protect your property from overdevelopment of your neighbor's property. So in a way, zoning rights are a community right. Zoning standards, these are the tools that enforce the zoning rights, enforce the community character, or protect the community character. Zoning standards for height, density, setbacks are the only laws, the only mechanism prescribed for protecting community character. There isn't any other. We can't say, oh, we like greenhouses. We don't, we like, and when I say green, I mean the color green, red houses, whatever it might be. We have to use these zoning laws. And these are under constant attack, both from our state and it's sometimes even from our city council. So when we were putting together Prop A, we talked about it and we decided that we wanted to keep it simple, and we chose increased density and height as the most threatened and the most influential two parameters, zoning standards that needed protection. So let's talk about, then we wrote the Prop A and it got adopted. And what does it do and what doesn't it do? Well, the first thing it does, it requires a public vote in cases where a new project increases the height above the Encinitas general plan of 30 feet or 2-story height limit. It also requires a public vote if you increase the maximum allowed number of units on a parcel or group of parcels. And that's essentially equivalent to density. Or it also requires a public vote to change a zoning class like commercial to residential, residential to commercial, that type of stuff. And that was to prevent any game playing or shell game, as I like to call it, of, well, I'll move it in here, and then when it comes back out, it's got a higher density or a taller limit on it. And it also redefined, or definitely defined, how height was measured, so that you couldn't play, nobody could play games with, what's the base, for the height. These are all concepts that were in the original general plan. So in the ultimate purpose and goal was to curb increases in traffic and pollution and growth, to protect the growth, to keep growth compatible with our current infrastructure, water, fire, police, as I said, to protect community character. And here's the one thing that I really like. It drives the city council to represent the voter, because they have to ultimately get this approval through the voter, not through the developers, not out-of-town special interests. The city council works for us, the voters, not for developers or out of town. To the degree that developers help us, help the residents, and help the voters to give them needed services, that's how they should be seen. And it guarantees the resident final say on major zoning increases in density and building height. Now, what doesn't it do?
Oh, Bruce, just one sec. I have
Sure.
a couple things to add. One thing Prop A does not require is a vote on down zoning. So if a property goes from residential or commercial down to parkland, no vote is required.
Or less density too.
For
Correct.
less density, that's correct. And then the other thing on the height measurement, what was happening was developers were padding up their lots and then measuring height from there, and you ended up with these houses way up in the air. So
Yeah, and
Just a
the
note there,
redefinition was really back to the original definition in the original general plan.
mhm.
It wasn't like we went to some new one. We kind of took it back and did a reset back to where it was supposed to be. It had, through multiple years of new zoning or development directors in the city, they had put through different definition changes that had allowed more flexibility, and in the end had allowed, in my opinion, abuse. So it does not affect any development that is already in compliance with current zoning. So there's no vote of the people if you're not changing the zoning. It does not infringe on any existing property rights. So like in the case of the height limit, there were no vested rights that were reduced as a result of imposing the original general plan height limit. and it doesn't prevent compliance with state mandates. In other words, it just puts the people in the position of judging what is in their best interest, what is in the public benefit. So it's up to the council to put the correct plan in front of them. So why is this election important? Right now, the current incumbents supported Measure T and Measure U. They've mostly opposed Prop A, and certainly did not support it, the ones that were either not up there or not vocal. And as opposed to Susan, Julie, and Alex, all support Measure A. Susan led the campaign, opposed Measure T and U. And by the way, the majority of the voters agreed with all three of Susan, Julie, and Alex in 2013, the majority in 2016, and the majority again in 2018. The choice is clear. Thank you.
Thanks,
That was
Bruce.
nice, Bruce.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Do you candidates want to comment on any of this before we open it up to questions? And I have some questions that have come to me as well that I want to be able to maybe start with, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I definitely have some comments. I can go before or after you, Cindy.
No, make the comments and then I'll
Okay.
ask questions when we open up Q&A.
2 points, Bruce and everyone. Prop A is protected under the California Constitution. It's not a minor thing. It's a big thing. It's protected. And the fact that it was reversed to put through Measure U and is now trying to be completely invalidated is another big thing. The only reason the citizens aren't taking that to court, because there's still so many balls up in the air right now. And it may be decided with a simple election, and that may get us back on track. The other point I wanted to make is that wherever you live, look around your house, and it's because of Prop A that it's the way it is. It's because of Prop A. For example, in Cardiff, where I live, before Prop A, people would convert properties in my neighborhood and put in totally max it out. They would go right to the lot, not the lot lines, but right to setback, front, back, build these big boxes, and they would go 2.5 stories high with 10-foot ceilings so they could get that top floor to maximize the view. And it was like a free-for-all in Cardiff. There was no slowing it down. You just lived in perpetual fear that one of those was going to be built next to you and you'd be stuck in the shade of it or its shadow for half the day, or in front of you and you would lose your view, or you would lose your sunsets, or all the trees you planted for sunshine would now be in the shade. So Prop A protects us from that. It's invaluable. If you've lived in a city where they don't control how people can build and what can happen, it's not fun. So I think we all have a certain expectation with the neighborhood we create, that we choose to pay a lot of money for a home in. And I think that's worth keeping. Thank you.
Susan,
So,
Alex?
no, I would like to get to the people, get to the questions.
Okay, let me, well, actually I have one for Bruce, and this is not quite off topic. So Bruce, how do you keep your job? How have you kept your job?
Which job? Are you talking on the planning commission, or are you talking my
Yes.
real job?
No, your real job. No, you're the planning commission. I mean, you are up against the majority there.
Well, it's interesting. The one thing I always go back to, I'm going to tell you a story about I've been on the planning commission twice, and once 15 years ago and now. And so when I first got on the planning commission 15 years ago, the very first project was the last phase of the Encinitas Ranch. It was the 8 half-acre houses. And, being the new guy, I read the code, the law. And the law very clearly said stair-step lots shall be prohibited. It didn't say shall be discouraged, didn't say use as last resort, shall be prohibited. And legal, I'm not a lawyer, but I know that much about language. That means you can't use them. But we were approving a project that was these stair-step lots, and that's what they were. They were graded flat. They went down. They went graded flat, and I lost that vote 4-1. but I stuck with the law. And over the next year, the next, I think 2 or 3 later, I got at them, the rest of the veteran planning commissioners to listen, and they started agreeing. And so I find that if we go back to the law, it's the one thing we will all agree on. If we go back to a vote of the people, it's the one thing that seems to end controversy in Encinitas. I'm going to go back to 1994, Home Depot. Home Depot was a huge fight in Encinitas.
I remember.
There were people on both sides, but as soon as that vote occurred, it stopped. And some good things came out of requiring a vote of the people that I don't think would have come out if the city council at that time, not this city council, but the city council at that time had negotiated. 75% of the Home Depot lot is put aside as natural in perpetuity. I don't think that would have happened otherwise. I call it a bean field on the corner, but the corner lot, that's set aside. That would have been, that probably would have been developed into something, a gas station or who knows what. But instead it got set aside because the people have a higher price, if you will, threshold for a public benefit than the council. So, it's a good real world example in Encinitas of how I keep my job is I try and reflect what the majority of the people in Encinitas want. That's my job on planning commission. That's the city council's job. And, we'll see if I keep it.
Well, I'm glad that you're at bat for us, which leads me to, so I'm going to go through a couple of questions because I think some folks would just prefer that I ask them for them, which I don't mind at all. But someone has asked, how do we get the citizens involved in the decision-making process? And this is to the candidates.
So the decision-making process on, I'm not sure, on specific projects. I mean,
Well,
if we have...
obviously Prop A, but how else? Yeah.
So no, I mean, I would say Prop A ensures that they are involved in the decision-making process. They will never be shut out as long as Prop A is around.
Right, but we feel shut out now.
Well,
I think, I think the lines of communication are dismal right now. And we're having half as many council meetings. People try to reach out to their council members and are often rebuffed, told that they can't be helped. I think we should probably have some of these big topics, like Bruce has talked about over the years. We should probably be having some town halls and getting everyone together and hashing it out and exchanging ideas in public.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty basic stuff that I don't know why we're not doing it. The city level government, that's your closest straight line to your representation that anywhere in the country. And if our current representatives aren't listening, then I guess they have 2 choices. One's to listen and the other's to look for a new job.
Yeah, yes. Well, we're fortunate to be able to vote every couple of years. Another question. So without Prop A, we have no checks and balances between developers and citizens?
I'll comment on that. You still have the municipal code at the city, and theoretically the planning commission will uphold that for you. And then if the developer appeals, like say if a planning commission turns down a project, and then the developer or the property owner can appeal the planning commission's decision and ask the city council to weigh in. And that's when the city council acts as judge and jury over the monster being built in front of you or behind you or next to you, or something downtown or on El Camino. There's a lot of room for error when a property owner or developer, number one, wants to get a majority approval from the planning commission. So he wants 3 votes out of the planning commission. Well, guess what they do? They start having private meetings with the planning commissioners, and they start doing things and asking their friend, find out who else knows them. They start working it. That's just what people do. And then let's say the planning commission still holds tight and says, no, we're not going to let you go up that high or that far or build a basement that deep or whatever it is. They say, let's say they say no, well then the developer or property owner has 3 more chances to try to get a majority of the city council to go his way. So what Prop A does is it just stops that whole thing. It's, you can't, the council and the planning commission can't agree to anything that violates Prop A.
Yeah.
So even we can have good councils, we can have bad councils, we can have good planning commissions, we can have bad planning commissions. But that's what Bruce was saying. Prop A keeps us, keeps our community character throughout the bad storms of less good councils.
And is that happening now?
Well, one more nuance on Julie hit it right on the nose, but there's one more nuance. What happened in the past is property owners would buy large parcels of land and sit on it and wait for the friendly, remember how I talked about the ebb and flow of the council? They wait in time for that friendly council to upzone. And so a good friend, Jerry Harmon, who was the mayor of Escondido and passed Prop S almost 20 years ago now, which is their Prop A. Basically, he said it, we took the fun out of land speculation. So in other words, what had been happening in town is that, in Escondido and all across California, is that developers, big money developers, would buy land and bid it up, not based on the value of the land at its current development right, but they would guess that they could get 10, 20, 50% more, and they would bid it up higher. So they were speculating, and that drove the prices higher, and it results in higher cost of land, higher cost of living in California from speculation. And so this helps curb that, and really honestly will help keep some of the land prices from going up much faster than they should.
I have one more thing to add. When you live in a town that has unusually high land values, it invites an unusually large amount of speculators. So there's constant pressure. Look at one of the incumbents running has a couple, more than two, maybe 3 or 4 donations from developers that were involved in Measure U. I don't know that that person even knows that, but I think they do. So see what happens? They're already, I've already, as a candidate, I've gotten calls to meet with people that are involved in this stuff. And it's just, they want to speculate.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. While it's strictly true that Prop A does not prevent compliance with state mandates, would you agree that it also does not prevent non-compliance?
Can we take some negatives out of that?
Yeah,
It's a double negative.
two double, so it does.
So if we turned it around, would we agree that it prevents compliance? Let me just jump right in. Absolutely not. The plans are the problem, not Prop A. This council is really shameless in blaming people blaming the residents for turning down plans that provide virtually no affordable housing when other cities provide far higher levels. We're actually the ones who are trying to be inclusive and trying to make the spirit of the law real. If we're expected to build affordable housing and provide it, we should. We shouldn't be putting plans in front of residents that have Prop A killer clauses in it. We shouldn't have secret meetings with developers that the city ends up having to admit to, and then those wish lists show up in the plans. We shouldn't be exceeding height that the state is not asking for. All those extras cause people, rightly so, to say no. I'm going to pop up a slide real quick while I have a chance here to share. Let me get this up. Sorry. I'm going to share my screen here. Put it to the right spot on my PowerPoint right here. So this is an example. So Encinitas does 15% affordable for its housing element updates. Capitola does 25%. Corte Madera up in the Bay Area, not a cheap area to live, manages 30%. Los Gatos requires 50%. We can do so much better than 15% affordable housing. And that's a big reason people say no. We're not the NIMBYs. I would say it's the opposite. I would say that the less you want to require, the more of a NIMBY you are. These cities are doing the right thing. And I think we can too.
Yeah.
They're compliant with the law. We can do it too.
Yeah, just in North Leucadia alone, we're looking at 1,400 units to only gain 80 affordable.
Yep.
That's a horrible ratio.
Yeah, and that was interesting when we were fighting Measure T and Measure U, but Measure T first. We made the argument quite often, and it carried the day, that we were doing all this and only getting 199 affordable units. And the city at the time would not admit it until, through a Public Records Act request, we got a memo. And quite frankly, it was an email from Catherine Blakespear, council member, not mayor, council member at the time, Catherine Blakespear, to the head of development, asking what the yield would be. And he came back in no uncertain terms and said it was 199. We'd get 2,000, roughly 2,000 new units. So about a 10%, about a 9% increase in the population of the city, and only get 199 out of our 1,000 affordable units we needed. And one of the best arguments I found knocking on doors was, this is not getting us the affordable housing. We're having to build 6 times as many market rate as we get in affordable. What this is right now is an unfunded mandate from the state saying you have to build the affordable units, but they're not sending the money to build them. And so as a result, we have huge growth numbers and very few affordable units coming out of it.
And that's why, Bruce, that's why there are so many cities fighting this now.
Yeah.
So the people of Encinitas have a choice. We can stay with the current council and agree with everything the state says and do whatever they say, even though it's an unfunded mandate and it's an egregious overreach of power and trying to force cities to do what they want us to do, not what is right for our city. That's number one. Go on, Alex. I heard you jump in on there.
Oh, well, I think it bears repeating what Bruce said on just the percentages of the population increase we're looking at with the same roads, the same sewer, the same water. And I feel like you're hitting traffic just about anywhere you go in this town as it is. It's we're like a ship that's going to tip over if you load too many people on top.
Well, I think this leads us to the next question. The incumbent council often says that the city's hands are tied when it comes to state density laws, and that we're forced to simply give developers everything they want. No setbacks, no environmental reviews, no height limits, etc. What can the council do to push back and still comply with state law?
I'd really just challenge those laws. I mean, if you've done any work on your house, and my wife and I did a remodel, we were held to the inch to everything in the house. And then you see a project proposed next door to you that's on the fence, almost 3 stories, looking into your backyard, right in your living room. They get everything they ask for. And, this, as a citizen, you don't have the same rights as a developer. And to me, what happened to equal protection under the law?
And there is latitude. So within density bonus law, there is room for interpretation. So it takes a council with the political will to interpret the law, still within the law, but the most protective interpretation possible for residents, instead of just rolling over and how fast can we hand the extras that are being asked, whether it's setbacks, whether it's parking, required on-site parking. There are some areas where we can minimize the impact.
I've heard folks say that pushing back would require lawsuits and lots of money. Is that necessarily true?
I don't think so. There's a lot of ways to push back without taking the state to court. I mean, we're just a little city. We're not going to take our own state to court. Oh, wait, our council is doing that right now.
Yes. On the very proposition we're discussing, actually.
Yeah, actually, come to think of it. But that's a friendly case, it seems like. There are cities across our state waking up to this. And I know a lot of people on this call have heard us say it before. We belong to that Livable California group. And I think everybody listening to this, if they are interested in what we're saying or agree with some of what we're saying, please consider joining Livable California. They are really, it is solely because of them that they held the line on the legislature on this SB 1120 that just came so close. It actually passed, but it passed so late in the day that it timed out before the clock struck midnight, literally. And that alone would have invalidated all single family housing. And your next door neighbors on both sides, in front of you and behind you, could build a fourplex on their lot, built lot line to lot line with no extra parking, no mitigation to traffic, and nothing to no extra payments to the schools to help for crowding or the water infrastructure or anything. So there's plenty of ways to fight. Number one, we can require much more than 15% affordable so that we actually solve the problem that's causing the state to be so, to overreach with us or with the whole state. Yeah.
I had a good question from someone. How do accessory dwelling units fit into all of this? I'm going to add two things to this. I heard John Van Cleef from the CRC suggest to the council during a recent meeting that it should be made mandatory that those ADUs are used for low-cost housing.
What?
He posed the question. I don't know if it would ever be part of a mandate, but I did see recently, and a city here in San Diego, 40% of ADUs, I believe, are mandated as low-income units.
Well, I'm right off the bat. Who's going to live in those ADUs? Is it going to be their children? So that doesn't necessarily solve your problem. And if we are going to talk about ADUs, I'd really like to get a real number of how many people are already living in the city and already living in apartments and back houses and all that. Because if you drive down Vulcan at night, it's nothing but a row of cars. And I feel like we don't get any credit for that as well. They say we have to continue. There's this almost Ponzi scheme of continuing numbers coming in at the bottom that you can never keep up with. And we don't get to reflect who's actually here already.
Cindy, go ahead.
Well, it's just, honestly, I don't trust what the state's saying at all.
Sorry, I'll be real quick. I would be interested in offering homeowners maybe some type of incentive to make their ADUs affordable. But I think it's egregious to not allow a homeowner to add an ADU if the city is zoned for ADUs, and we are. I think it's really it would be overreach on our part to tell them they can't do it unless they do it our way.
And are ADUs being fit into the housing plan? Are they a part of it, or are we using that to meet our numbers?
So you can use a certain percentage, Bruce. I think the number is increasing, isn't it, for ADUs? How many you can count?
No, it's the other way around. We had a blind assumption originally that it was 50%, but the HCD made us go do a real study. And when they did a sampled study, it came back at 23%. So the truth is, the number of ADUs we are getting to count is dropping, or at least flat at best, even with all this encouragement. And by the way, we've now okayed that a accessory dwelling unit can be 1,200 square feet and be the same size as the main house.
No.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and 3-bedroom, which we tried. The planning commission recommended 50%, I believe was the ratio, and up to 1,000 square feet, as I recall. And and that was unanimous out of the planning commission, and then the city council went and bumped it up to the max that the state allows. And
really?
Under the guise that we would be getting extra units to many extra units, and it would somehow solve our affordable unit problem. And at the same time, this reduction in 23 was happening, and we essentially were getting, you know, a handful, 40 units over 8 years. So 5 units a year.
And so I'm looking at, oh, sorry, Alex, you were going to say something.
No, I agree with Bruce. The 1,200 square foot ADU, that's actually the size of my house already.
Yeah.
That's all. That's
Yes,
just like
larger than
splitting
my
a
house.
lot. Yeah,
Bigger
that
than mine.
sounds like a workaround to split
Yeah.
the lot and build 2 houses.
So,
Um,
Cindy, I'm just going to jump in because I see an important question here that
Yes.
I think should be answered. This fellow says, I think it's fellow, I'm for slow growth, but as a finance guy, I know that builders have said they can't make money at over 15% with prices here. So, you know, we've never required them to show their math, quite frankly. In Tiburon, which I would say is much more expensive than it is here, they require 25 to 30%. So I really would take issue with that assertion. But Bruce, do you have an opinion on that in terms of
Yeah, and
anything more to add?
I actually tried to go on the group chat, and I realized I did it privately to somebody and not publicly. First of all, the city did a nexus study for our inclusionary affordable requirement. And that inclusionary means for every project that is built, you know, 10, 20, 30 or up, 15% of those have to be affordable to lower income. And they did a nexus study, and the nexus study came back and said that number could really even go up to 20, maybe 25 in some cases. And that is just across the board on any development. Now let's take the special case of these R30 step-up zones. And remember what's happening here, like the land in Levenheim went from RR2, 2 units per acre, about 9 houses, up to R30, which is going to result in 283 units, each selling, the market rate one selling probably around $1 million. So huge increase in value of that land. The city has hired an outside lawyer who's probably one of the foremost authorities on land use in the state of California. And her quote was, when I asked her at Planning Commission, she said it is, quote, fairly common to require a higher inclusionary percentage on these step-up zones, and we're not doing it. And the previous Planning Commissioner chair tried floating this prior to Measure T and getting it into Measure T. I took it to the city council, and when they adopted Measure T, got ignored. I brought it back. I even had presented her words, the lawyer's words, directly to the council and the mayor, and the mayor questioned her at length about it, and at the end said, "Oh, that's new news." And that was on June of 2018, right? When they adopted Measure U.
Measure U.
That meeting, if you want to go back and look at the tape. And but the bottom line is, it's been presented to the council multiple times, but we have not got that increased zoning like the examples that Susan showed. It exists, it's done today, and it would meet the legal requirements of a nexus.
Bruce, does it make sense for you to say that by doing that, well, by doing a couple things, by upzoning the 15 lots and allowing the developers to build on their projects only 15% affordable, does it make sense to say that at that point the city council picked winners and losers? The winners are the owners of those 15 lots because they instantly became multimillionaires.
Yeah.
Right then, as soon as she handed Measure U to the state.
I think the best indication proof of what you just said, Julie, that it's a windfall for the developer is the fact that there are so many of these projects immediately in front of the coming through the city.
And do you remember the mayor said they'll probably never get built?
Yeah. And so the whole point is it's a gold rush right now, and they're trying to get these through in Encinitas. Yeah. And as a result, we're giving away affordable housing. We're giving away, I should say, we're giving away our community character and getting very little affordable housing in return.
Right. So when they picked winners and losers, the developers are the winners and the losers are us.
The neighbors in particular.
The neighbors in particular and us. Yeah. We're not going to be able to get down, up and down Encinitas Boulevard without double the time.
Yeah.
Once there's over 400 units at the corner of Quail Gardens Drive.
So let's talk about the net effect of having 15% or 50% or somewhere in between. is that in order to pay for the 15%, you have to do 6 times more houses.
Bruce, I have the
So-
slide.
Oh, you got this. Okay, good. And you'll see that the percent increase of population is so much bigger. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay, what are we looking at?
Down one
This-
more.
The chart right here. You seeing that 15?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This guy?
So
Yeah.
so there are roughly 25,000 households in the city of units in the city of Encinitas. So if we're stick at 15,000, in order to meet our current requirements from HCD for this housing cycle, we would have to add a total of 5,500 or almost 5,600 additional units. Of those, only 838 would be affordable. So there's a 6-to-1 ratio roughly there, right? It's 1 over 0.15. But when you get up, and the result is you end up with about, I'm trying to think, was it a 22% increase in population over this housing cycle? It's significant, it's huge. And of course, if you increase housing by units by 22%, traffic goes up by 22%, population goes up by 22%, pollution goes up. On the other hand, if we can take this windfall and use part of it to pay for a higher percentage of affordable, like Los Gatos has done, you can see that the numbers drop significantly,
Mhm.
because you're now only building, in their case, 1 for 1, not 6 for 1. And
Right.
so the impact to the city of Encinitas is much less, and you get the same number of affordable units. What doesn't happen is the windfall doesn't occur for the builder, the landowner.
And Bruce and panel members, what I'm seeing constantly in the chat and what I hear and read all the time is that, what is it that we want? Do we want a high density city that we lose quality of life with high rises? And really the bottom line is, and I want to know this too, how do we fight that? Will you fight that? That's what we want. Can you do it? Can you do it without breaking the bank with
Well,
lawsuits?
we have to,
Yeah.
Cindy, we have to provide more affordable.
Yes.
We don't want to become, I have a very good friend in Aspen, Colorado, and I have a daughter that's living in Big Sky right now, waitressing and trying to make a go of her art career. There's, at both towns have no affordable, very little affordable housing. So what they did, I'm not proposing this for Encinitas. Let me just make that really clear. I am not proposing this for Encinitas, but I'm saying what other towns do. They're small little mountain towns. So what the cities do is actually build their own, and they call it employee housing. So I'm using that as what the extreme end does. These little cute mountain towns that it's very expensive to live there. So, and how do you get employee housing? You're an employee in the town. You either work for the ski lift or one of the restaurants. You know, they have a system of showing that. And then sometimes you go when the season ends and sometimes you stay. So that's on the far end of building affordable housing for people who live in your town. So the other extreme is, I think, what we've just done by reversing our vote with Measure U and then reversing our vote with Prop A and then causing all this chaos and barely giving us any affordable. And by the way, who's going to manage those affordable units? Does the developer get to pick who lives there? How do we do that? Do we require it be someone who's working in Encinitas, so it's for people in Encinitas? There's just so many questions about this, and it seems like it's just what Bruce said, a windfall for the developers to me. And I don't think it's helping very many people.
I think
Cindy?
this is, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was hoping that we could open it up for people to just speak live, but I do see this one question about the city having received a letter from the state of California
Yes,
stating we're
I was
out of
going to go
compliance.
to that.
So
Yes.
first of all, many cities in California are out of compliance, and they don't have Prop A, they're just out of compliance. Other cities do have a Prop A voter requirement. They have their own Prop whatever. They do pass compliant housing elements because they are putting a plan in front of voters that voters can stomach. And again, I'll go back to Prop A not being the block here. The plan is the block. So when the plan is overloaded with extras for developers that the state is not requiring, whether it's height, setback, parking, you name it. And when you bury Prop A killer clauses in the language to boot, people very naturally say no. And it's interesting, when we first started the task force, Bruce, you'll remember this, the HCD consultant to the city,
Yeah.
Dave Barquist, he was asked, how do you pass a compliant plan? He stood up in front of everyone and said, I'm going to tell you. And he spoke to Tony Krantz and he spoke to Catherine Blakespear directly. He said, you pass a plan with the voters by presenting the most stripped down, most bare bones plan, not an extra inch in height, setback, parking, nothing. And sorry, I'm yelling because I get excited about this. And you are honest with the voters. You show your paper trail of negotiations. By the way, the city neglected to do that on T and again on U. So Prop A is just the vote. The plan is the constraint.
So let me ask, are all of you, do all of you agree with that? All you three candidates? Because people are asking, and let's put it on record. Is that how you will fight for our city and the quality of life that we've all worked so hard to maintain?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That there are two stakeholders in the room, the state and the voters, period.
Mhm, mhm.
Right.
The council is here to represent the voters, not the state. Our current council is representing the state. They've sided with the state against the residents.
They've actually sided with developers, I would say.
Actually, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, we're taking the wrong side on these these fights. It should be fighting for the residents and our neighborhoods.
So can we talk about a coalition and going, opposing or getting some of these laws fixed?
I think
Yeah,
there is one.
Absolutely. Yeah, Encinitas should be joining the list, the growing list of states of cities of livable California. Mayor Redondo Beach, Beverly Hills, not Corte Maderas, Pleasanton, cities up and down the state, between 150, 350 people a week on a call, all elected officials, all banding together to bring some sanity to the state. Encinitas is nowhere to be seen. We would be there. I would be there. I think the other two would be too. So having
Yeah, don't we
said
all
all
want
that.
our state back?
Yeah.
I want my state back. And
Well,
I'm not a NIMBY. I'm not a
No.
NIMBY. I welcome everybody and anybody. And I want my adult age daughters to be able to afford to live here. One does, but I'd like the other three too. So I totally get it. I get the constraints of affordability, and I get the overreach of the state with these unfunded mandates. It's not fair. It's not fair that they tell a city, you have to cram in all this high density, but we're going to give you no money for your schools, no money for your street, no money for your infrastructure. If you have worse traffic and flooding, well, too bad for you. Find the money. That's not right. Other states don't operate like that.
So maybe we can talk to have some folks on mute, maybe?
If anybody wants to raise their hand or get unmuted, I'm happy to take live questions. Otherwise, I'm going to continue with questions that we have in the meantime.
Sure.
This one from Steve Gherkin. Is the genie already out of the bottle? With Goodson asking for 40 DU acres and Baldwin asking for 45 DU acres in their application before the city, that they get to develop under the current standards?
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, with the current council, I think it's a done deal. With us, we're just going to look harder to find a way to slow that down and to change it.
And Goodson's going to court, so I think the others are all going to be watching to see what the Olegenheim neighbors are able to do with the Goodson project.
Yes. Let's see if let's see. I don't see anybody asking live, so we'll just keep going.
Sure.
Oh, wait, hold on. Gail Flores.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question, or Ruben. I'm not sure which.
Yes. Do we want to, let me unmute you, Gail. Do you?
Hi.
Hi, Ruben.
Hi, guys. How's everybody doing? This is Ruben. For whatever reason, I'm getting on the same invite that my wife is, so I apologize for that. But both of us are watching from separate accounts. Listen, I'm just so thrilled to see what Bruce had to say, and I can't wait to vote Julie and everyone else. You know, this election cycle, I just feel like I need to say, you know, I was there at the first meeting at Tony Kranz's house, followed by a meeting at Bruce Heller's house, when Prop A was being drafted and was being sort of thought of. And I saw, my concern was that we were going to set up a situation just like the one we're in, that we were going to be sort of, locking head-horns with the state and being in a difficult situation. I just wanted to ask, and I'm happy to hear that there's cities that are fighting now and stepping up, but I wanted to ask specifically to some of you, I don't know if Bruce can help us answer this question, but given that Escondido, for example, Bruce mentioned, has a Prop S that is like Prop A, how is Escondido and other cities that have similar Prop A's faring with the state mandates? What can we learn from that to successfully and in an expeditious manner not have to deal with all this BS that we're dealing with the state?
We're in touch. And Ruben, you should add that you were on the Planning Commission. But anyway.
Well, that's the reason why I got into the Planning Commission, because all of that. So anyway, yeah, thank you.
So, I mean, I'll take that real quickly because we're in touch with actually council people from Yorba Linda, and Yorba Linda is what Prop A is based on their initiative. And they did just what our consultant said at the beginning. They were very careful to put a plan in front of voters that the planners would go for. They even went so far as to split their vote into one really big project they were concerned the voters might not like, and a more reasonable section of, grouping of up zones in town. And they ended up passing both, but they were very straightforward and honest with the voters. I've spoken with the councilwoman there, and that's how they passed it. And I'll say one other thing about Escondido. In general, when projects go before their Prop S, according to a local land use attorney, Everett Delano, the last 8 out of 10 projects were approved by the voters. And what happens is, A, it penciled out for the developer. B, because the public vote was required, it forced a better development. You end up with more open space, you end up with covered parking, you end up with a better designed building, and the developers still made their money. So it is not it's by no means a no growth strategy or a block.
And I think that needs to be made well known. That there's a positive way to handle Prop A. I've been converted. I was on the other side, and I've learned a lot.
Welcome aboard.
So, thank you.
Wait, you were on the good side, then you're saying you went over to the dark side, and now you're back, right?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what happened, Bruce.
You were there at the very beginning, yeah.
Yes, I was there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
It really comes down to what are the facts, and that's why the history is so important to really understand why we have what we have and how it's absolutely necessary.
I've got a question from Eric Humphrey, and this is important, I think. Why did the city receive a letter from the state of California stating we are out of compliance? He was under the impression Prop A was the effective, if not technical, block to that. And Bruce noted that Prop A does not block us from being in compliance. How does that jibe with the California letter?
Bruce?
Do you want me to answer it, or you take the first shot?
Yeah, no, go ahead, Bruce.
Okay. The letter just came out on August 27th, so it's a very new letter, and it is what happened. And I think we didn't talk about this earlier. The lawsuit. So after Measure U failed, the city was already involved in 2 lawsuits, and part of the lawsuits had to do with the housing element update. And in the settlement between the city and the Building Industry Association of San Diego, and the other lawsuit between the city and Tenants United, a low-income advocate group, those 3 parties agreed that we were at an impasse. The citizens, the proponents of Prop A, didn't have a word in there, because the city had said they were going to defend Prop A, and in the end flipped on us and rolled over. And so the judge, and I was at every one of the judges, every one of the court hearings, and listened to the judge's discussion and read his writ very carefully. The judge said, "Oh, I see we have agreement between the parties here that we're at an impasse, and therefore we are going to," he said, "I'm going to give you relief for this one cycle and only this one cycle."
Just look at what I, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's there. Susan's got it right from the writ. And so only for this, what's called the 5th cycle, we're now heading into the 6th cycle, housing cycle. And basically it said that the city had 120 days to put whatever plan they wanted in front of the, see, where was it, to HCD, to the Housing and Community Development Department, the department that controls the housing elements. And they did, and the judge said, you will not have to get a vote for this one cycle. And HCD will have to approve it. Well, HCD has taken that to mean that they can dictate anything and everything they want in that housing element, including saying that we have to overturn, essentially take Prop A votes out. And so if you read through the letter, that's basically what it's saying. It's pointing to the judge, and the judge was very measured in his writ and in his judgment. And he said, just this cycle is just one. Most judges are very hesitant to step on the citizens' right of initiative, and that's precisely what is happening. Is the housing, HCD is taking that decision, the court decision, and expanding well beyond the bounds, and asking for all sorts of things that weren't covered by the writ. So I believe that will be yet another lawsuit in the future, and it will ultimately culminate in a question of whether Prop A as an initiative is a right of the voters of Encinitas, and we'll see what happens. But
Bruce, it's important to note the state is not going after other Prop A's, right? They're not going after Yorba Linda. They're not going after Escondido. They're going after Encinitas.
Yeah.
And is that because they the council reversed and allowed this to happen? And why did that council do that?
But wait, one of the things we got to do before we'll get to yours, Cindy.
Okay.
The letter has a lot in it, but one of the other main points is that it claims that our housing element, the draft housing element that we submitted for review, addresses affordability, but not affirming fair housing. That's a lot to say at once. Basically, to get it does not address in what the city turned into the state. How do we get more racially diverse, culturally diverse people moving to Encinitas? And that's a fair criticism. So it is not just about Prop A. It holds Prop A up, in their opinion, as an impediment, but in no place does it prove that. And what it does really spend quite a bit of time is talking about how you haven't addressed affirmative fair housing. You've only addressed affordable housing, and they are different things. And then there are even other things. So HCD didn't simply find that we weren't in compliance, or that trying to think the exact word, that it wasn't just Prop A, but they see Prop A as an impediment to getting a housing element that they will approve.
And I will say this, I firmly believe that there's a lot of back and forth between the city and HCD. The city has made no secret for years since it passed, basically, that it wanted Prop A out of the way. And we've never seen any of the emails back and forth because there are no records kept. I've done records requests and been told by the head of planning, we decided not to keep any records of our communications with HCD. And on this most recent letter, a friend just made a public records request to the city for communications between HCD and the city, and we were actually denied the public records request. So we're denied access to negotiations seeing the negotiations between the city and HCD. So Cindy, there's a lot of stuff happening in a black box there that we have no visibility to, and I am sure that the three of us would not be running things that way. I can tell you that.
I'll make it even simpler. The current council isn't going to defend our city. They've made that clear. Nobody can dispute that. They are not interested in defending what the people want. They are interested in going along whatever HCD or the state, I don't know who they're listening to, but they're not interested in defending us and why we moved here. Susan, Alex, and myself, and I think most of the people on this call are. So that'll be the difference. The difference will be with any one of us on council. If it were just me and I were the minority, you'd be hearing from me all the time.
Absolutely.
Here, I would be holding up letters. Dear residents of Encinitas, this is what the state's doing to us now. There would be no secrets because I'm not here for a launching pad to go to Sacramento. I'm here because I want my town back.
Cindy,
Super
somebody,
simple.
Yes.
thank you. Someone has a question for Ruben. Sorry, Julie, I kind of.
That's all right. No, I was done.
Yes, and we'll take that. We'll do that question, and then we're going to wrap it up. We are 15
All right,
minutes
sorry,
over.
I'm jumping over your job.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Go ahead. What was the? I'll let you lead with that, Susan.
Well, it just says I'd like to ask a question of Ruben, but I don't know who it is he's asking.
I
don't know.
We don't.
Yeah, okay, we keep going, I guess.
All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up because we are running so late.
One thing I don't think we
Yes.
covered about Prop A.
Yeah.
And I feel personally offended by the mayor saying that she did not sue the residents. I am personally offended by that because I am one of the proponents of Prop A, obviously. Our lawyer for Prop A was approached by the city. They did file a lawsuit. I have the filed lawsuit. We have videotape of her saying she sued the residents, not once, twice on the tape, where she was presenting to a friendly crowd talking about intensifying suburbia. And I think I need to go on record that, yes, I had to retain a lawyer because I got notice from the city that they filed a lawsuit, no uncertain terms. They did not serve the lawsuit in the end because after 3 months of blowback from the citizens and my mayor sued me signs showing the political absurdity of the situation that you would sue the majority of your voters that voted to pass
For
Prop A.
protection. They voted
Yeah.
for protection.
So I think that needs to be said in this case, and I think Susan being a leader of that feels the same way. I feel strongly about it.
Yeah, and I do want to show one last thing. I keep showing the wrong thing. I do want to show one last thing here. Bruce is right. There was blowback from residents that somehow the city did not anticipate from actually threatening to sue its residents, filing against residents. So the city redirected the lawsuit, dropped the lawsuit against residents, redirected it against the state. However, it's important to know that the city is still going after Prop A. This is the prayer for relief at the end of the lawsuit filed against HCD. First of all, the city is asking for just a simple majority of the city council to make these major land use changes, upzoning changes. Pre-Prop A, it was a 4/5 supermajority. So this is a little extra grab right here for power. And then city council may adopt future housing elements without requiring a vote of the people.
Yeah.
This is what the city is asking for, no matter who the defendant is. And so Preserve Prop A is going to have a seat at the table. We filed, our lawyer filed as an intervener.
And I want to explain the reason for that and why I was offended. I was offended because the mayor is using our tax money, the majority's tax money, to sue us as individuals, where we have to come up with voluntary money to fight them. So it's a classic David Goliath situation where we as David have to put our personal assets on the line and go defend something we already won. They should be taking our side and not suing us. So when they sued us, we were hoping to get a deal where they would agree to pay for our lawsuit. Now, obviously, when they changed tax, then they are leaving us out of the lawsuit. They went and found the friendliest defendant they could in the house HCD, and they're now suing HCD, where they're going to agree to get rid of Prop A, right? That's their easy answer out. So now we have to again go to our pocketbooks and go and hire a lawyer and get a seat at the table. So I'm quite annoyed at it, if you can tell.
I can tell, and I don't blame you. I wonder, we've never talked about this. Should we do a GoFundMe to pay for the?
We're planning one.
We will.
Okay.
Yeah, we're planning one. We will.
Before the election, or will this be an?
This will take a while to play out, so we will have to ramp that up and get the language from the attorney.
Quite frankly, one of the reasons why we need a new council is so that the council majority, or at least there's somebody on the council that is speaking for the voters that were in the majority that passed Prop A. And we don't have that today. Today we have a council that is clearly on the opposition side, and they're controlling what lawsuits happen and when and where, with no voice from the opponents.
And that lawsuit can be dropped immediately if we get in. So that could all that nonsense can go away. All right, looks like the clock has run.
Yes, the clock has run out. Just quickly, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, everyone. This has been a most excellent and informative meeting, especially Bruce. You are always welcome here, and we appreciate all of the information, and you're stepping out on a limb for us. Of course, candidates, Julie, Susan, Alex, you guys rock. You'll get my vote. If anybody wants to chip in to their campaign, they can use it. We have a big fight still ahead of us. We'll be here next week, same time, same place, and we'll be announcing our next agenda shortly. And thank you everyone again for coming. And if you have questions we didn't get to, email the candidates or me, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks so much.
Thanks everybody. Good night.